Let's move now to that steadily worsening situation in Ukraine. My next guest, General Sir Richard Sherriff, is a highly distinguished former British Army officer who served as NATO's Deputy Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, one of the highest ranking positions within NATO. Now, we spoke to him earlier in the year about his book that he published back in 2017. It was called War with Russia, an urgent warning from senior military. And it was framed as a bit of a fictional future history, but he eerily predicted how war with Russia could erupt, and many of his predictions and scenarios, very sadly, have come true. Now, his latest warning is that NATO needs to change its mindset totally and begin rearming Western European countries to prepare for war with Russia. General Sir Richard Sherriff joins me now from the United Kingdom. Thank you for your time, General. Prescient, if nothing else, you say Europe's got to prepare for war. There's not many of us that want to hear that. You're saying that. Why is it necessary?
Well, good day, and it's very good to be with you. The way to ensure peace is to prepare for war. The old Roman adage applies just as much now as it did 2,500 years ago. And so when I say prepare for war, it's about being ready for the worst case. And the worst case is war with Russia. None of us want to see the current conflict in Ukraine spill over into a general war in Europe. And let's also be clear, the Russians are pretty fixed in Ukraine. In fact, they're more than fixed. They're on the back foot. But nevertheless, Russia remains a deadly, deadly foe. There will never be peace in Europe while Putin or any form of Putin lookalike is in the Kremlin. And so when I say Europe needs to be ready for war, it's about being ready to deter war. And this is going to be a long-running thing, because even when the guns fall silent in Ukraine, assume Russia remains committed to rebuilding a Russian empire, and that is going to mean that Europe and European nations, and indeed the transatlantic community, NATO, need to be ready for the worst case.
All right, two questions come from that. Are you saying then, categorically, that these European nations are not ready, and as ready as you say they should be, to fight for peace? Let's put it in those terms. And where is Ukraine in terms of the support they need to keep up what's been a heroic fight? When we spoke earlier in the year, I don't think anyone would have predicted they would be where they are now in October. So those two questions: is Europe doing enough? Are they ready themselves? And can we do more for Ukraine?
Answer yes and yes. Sorry, no and yes. Europe is not ready for war. European armies, the NATO, most NATO armies, less probably the Americans, have gone through 2 decades worth of consistent and cumulative defense cuts. Stocks of ammunition, of weapons have been run down, of spares, and there is an enormous amount to do to gear up European armies to be prepared for the worst case. As far as Ukraine is concerned, absolutely more could be and should be done. Indeed, the NATO defense ministers are meeting in Brussels as we speak, looking at what Ukraine needs. Let's be clear as well, Europe and NATO, and indeed the West, because Australia has contributed a great deal too. I saw a shot of a Bushmaster on Twitter being used as a recovery vehicle the other day. Have done an enormous amount to provide support to Ukraine, and Ukraine would not have been able to fight as magnificently as they have done without that support. But more can be done, and more needs to be done.
How seriously do we take these nuclear threats from Putin?
Very seriously. It's incredibly dangerous of Putin to be nuclear saber-rattling. Russia integrates nuclear thinking into every aspect of its military doctrine. So it is always there as an option. But go back to your first question. If NATO is strong, if NATO is ready to demonstrate that any, and particularly led by the Americans, of course, that any hint of nuclear action will bring untold suffering down on Russia, then we have a chance of deterring it. I think the chances are slim, but nevertheless, we thought the chances of Putin attacking Ukraine were slim. We thought the chances of massacres in Mariupol and other cities along the scale that we have seen were slim. They have happened. We have to take that nuclear threat very seriously indeed.
General Sir Richard Sherriff, thank you.